let's kick it off. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today, I'm joining from the land of the Wongal clan of the Eora Nation, and I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're all joining from today, pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. We recognise that Aboriginal people have had a continuous connection to country and acknowledge that 4 groups have primary custodial care obligations for the area in Western Sydney where Bradfield City Centre is being developed. Today we'll be talking about recycled content in products, which is a way of keeping resources in use. And while the focus on keeping resources in use and the term circular economy has emerged in recent decades, we acknowledge that First Nations people have been practicing the values at the core of this concept for thousands of years. My name is Karen Shaw and I'm part of the Bradfield Development Authority. We are a New South Wales government agency that's delivering the new city of Bradfield in Western Sydney. This is a really large development, 114 hectares, five times the size of Barangaroo, and it's being built and developed near the new Western Sydney International Airport. This will be a mid-rise mixed-use development, as you can see in the image, with around 2 million square metres of gross floor area and over 80 mixed-use buildings, which will be built over the coming decades. It will feature a research and innovation precinct, retail entertainment, 36 hectares of open space, waterways and playgrounds, and one of the first developments will be a 2-hectare central park. And the first stage of development is due to be complete next year. As we build this new city, we have a strong focus on sustainability. We also have a strong focus on the local industry, connecting to country and the community. And one of the ways that we're embedding sustainability in the new city is by using sustainable building materials. So whether they're low carbon products that contain recycled content, which is what today's all about, reusing products like furniture from DFITs, or selecting products with other sustainability credentials. Today's webinar is focused on building products that contain recycled content, and I'd like to refer to this quote from the Circular Economy Markets team in New South Wales Government just to set the scene. So nearly half of global emissions come from the production, consumption and disposal of products and materials. We need to focus on getting as much out of products and materials as possible, as much use out of those products and materials as possible. And by using products that contain recycled content, we can reduce the need to extract raw materials, we can reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfill, and we can save energy and reduce emissions. This project came about because we recognise that there's a growing demand for building products that contain recycled content. And we also recognise that manufacturers need to demonstrate the sustainability credentials of their products. So Bradfield Development Authority received funding through the New South Wales Choose Circular program, and we contracted the environmental consultancy firm Edge Impact to undertake this project. Edge Impact offer a range of services, including life cycle assessment, verification, and environmental product declarations, EPDs, and they often speak to manufacturers, and so they'll be delivering the majority of today's content. In November 2024, we surveyed manufacturers of building products, and we asked them if they're currently using recycled content in their manufacturing and how they're using certification schemes and any barriers. So thank you to the 116 manufacturers and industry groups who responded to that survey. We'll be sharing some of those findings today. The next stage was the Edge Impact, conducted research into certification schemes and their uptake by industry. And then today's webinar is all about sharing those insights with you. And the purpose is really to support local manufacturing, the local manufacturing industry. So in today's webinar, you'll hear from 2 members of the Edge Impact team, Christian Keel and Paula Saldias. This is today's agenda. First of all, we'll talk about what's driving that demand for products that contain recycled content, New South Wales Government and Commonwealth Government requirements. We'll look at Green Star and infrastructure sustainability ratings, and how the product selection helps achieve credits towards these rating schemes. And we'll also look at how manufacturers are using recycled content in their products. And then in section 2, Paula will take us through certifications, labels, standards and tools, EPDs. She'll compare the information that's captured by a number of these different schemes. And she'll also talk about the documentation and the cost requirements from a manufacturer's perspective if you were to apply for some of these certifications. In the final section, I'll wrap up with some information about government procurement and useful resources, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And this webinar is being recorded. We'll share the link to the recording and the slides in a couple of days' time via email. We'll also be asking some polls throughout the webinar, and we'll just be using the functionality within Zoom. No need for any additional apps. And if you have any Q&A, any questions as we go, please feel free to add them to the Q&A as we go, or wait until the end. And definitely Christian and Paula would be very happy to answer any technical questions then. So let me hand it over to Christian to go through the first section.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Karen. It's such a pleasure to be here today and to be talking about such an important topic. So we're going to start by providing a bit more context on what's driving the demand for products containing recycled content. And jump to the next slide, if that's okay, Paula. Okay, perfect. So we'll start with the definition of what is recycled content. So it's essentially referring to the proportion of a product materials that come from recycled sources as opposed to virgin materials. This is typically split into 2 different types, so pre-consumer and post-consumer. And definition can vary significantly depending on the industry set standards, certification, and regulations, which can lead to some inconsistencies and confusion. But we're here to try to demystify some of those today. So there are a range of complexities around recycled content. And one major complexity is distinguishing between pre-consumer and post-consumer recycled content. So with pre-consumer recycled content, it's the materials reclaimed during the manufacturing process. So for example, factory scraps. We see this really commonly in the building product space, as well as fit out manufacturing. My favorite example refers to Kit Kats, which I recently learned that particular chocolate does like to crush up the defects and build them into new Kit Kat bars. So it's a wonderful way to remember the pre-consumer recycled content. For post-consumer recycled content, it's derived from products that have already been in use. So this is what most people would typically refer to from a layman's perspective as being recycled content, but it's really important to note that there are 2 different components to it, and they get treated in slightly different ways. So standards and certification schemes have their own criteria and definitions for recycled content, and it's really helpful to understand these in a bit more detail to help with the stakeholder decision-making process. So as far as the New South Wales government requirements, agencies are required to preference products that contain recycled content, including building materials and office fit-out and supplies, on an if not, why not basis, where there are no significant additional costs or negative impacts on performance and the environment. So it's become, given the impact of waste, it's become a particularly relevant focus area, and especially for governments. So guidance has come out of the New South Wales Waste and Sustainable Materials Strategy in 2021, which I believe covers a 20-year horizon with a focus on the nearer term initially. The strategy was focused on problematic waste streams and how waste streams can be used rather than ending up in landfill. And waste streams can be used to produce biogas, such as recycled feedstock to remanufacture building products and so on. So one of the key reforms outlined in the strategy is for New South Wales agencies to preference these products that contain recycled content on an if not and why not basis. So as far as the requirements, there's currently we talked about the if not, why not basis. So there's a new policy that outlines reporting requirements for New South Wales government agencies, and this is called the Sustainable Construction Protection of Environment Policy, or the PEP, which is currently on public exhibition. You can see the cover in the bottom of the screen there as a reference. And it details how agencies need to monitor and report on the use of recycled content in construction. The required reporting is likely to include different elements, including the types, quantities, and costs of products that contain recycled material, the quantities of key products containing their recycled material, as well as the lessons learned in the uptake of recycled materials, referencing both the barriers and the opportunities. And this means that product information will need to be readily available, including how much recycled content there is in the product. I think for me, the takeaway is that the market is certainly shifting in this direction. And one of the biggest challenges we see from our customers working on certifications or EPDs is essentially that availability of information and their ability to, liaise with suppliers to get the information they need in a timely manner. So I think whether you're, I guess, on the bleeding edge of this change, or someone that's looking to comply with I guess, policies and the directional change, just understanding, I guess, the provenance of your products becomes increasingly important. So from a Commonwealth government perspective, Commonwealth government also has a focus on tracing and verifying recycled content in products. So they've released a national framework for recycled content traceability and step-by-step implementation guidelines. So these aim to increase the availability of recycled content information within supply chains. And this is a framework, is a voluntary guideline, and it lists the data sets businesses need to share with each other to trace and verify recycled content. The implementation guide provides high-level steps for setting up traceability systems so businesses can collect the necessary information to support their recycled content claims. So the recycled content information within supply chains that you can see on the screen includes the basic data, which is just for, I guess, data architecture purposes. So the provenance, including examples of country of origin, jurisdiction of origin, feedstock source type, the composition, so recycled content claims, chain of custody approach and mass balance period, and then quality. So for example, processing methodology, chemical content declaration, and certification start and end dates. So the state and federal focus on using recycled content means opportunities for manufacturers of products that contain recycled content. And it's wonderful to see that it's happening in the New South Wales jurisdiction, Commonwealth jurisdiction, and we're hearing a lot of interest from suppliers as well. Even at the Sustainability Leaders Conference that I attended last week, there was a live discussion between a supplier of apparel and a potential customer. And I guess one of the key sticking points in, I guess, that transaction or potential transaction was that the procuring party did want to see a life cycle assessment conducted to support the claims. And that was actually a really significant barrier to that particular deal. And actually it was unlikely to go through without that LCA evidence support. So that was just a general discussion, had in a sidebar chat at a conference last week. And just, I guess, a great example of how this is playing out in real life and why it becomes, relevant to any business that's looking to expand its customer base or its volumes. So before we keep going with the content, we did want to ask the audience. We actually sent a survey to manufacturers as part of this project, and we asked if the products manufactured or sold contain recycled content. So this is a question for you, just based on the predicted response to this poll from our earlier work. How many of those manufacturers do you think include recycled content in their products? So we're going to put a poll on the screen now, so you'll have a chance to respond. I can see, I guess, the live updates. And so if our options are less than 30%, between 30 and 60%, and above 60% or above 61%, I'll give you a couple more minutes to work, or another minute to work through this. But we're seeing, I guess, a favouring of less than 30%, with 60% of respondents on this call today guessing less than 60%. We're seeing about 30% for that middle band, 30 to 60%. And for above 60%, we're seeing just 5% of respondents so far. So I can still see the responses coming through thick and fast. We're at 66 out of 80, so nearly there. I'll give you another 30 seconds to work through that. And then I'll ask Paula to close the poll and share the results. So the trend is still looking like 66 as less than 30, but I won't spoil the surprise to have had a chance to close this poll and reflect on what we saw from our own surveys of manufacturers. So we've got 85% of responses so far, and it seems to have slowed down. So Paula, this might be a good time to close the poll. Perfect.
We are sharing the results now. Yeah, can you see that on your screen? I think you should be able to see it. Great.
Perfect. So what we're seeing is that, so from our surveyed audience today of participants, 64% predicted that less than 30% of manufacturers sold products containing recycled content. 30% of our participants today thought it might be between 31 and 60%, and then 6% thought it might be above 61%. So let's reflect on our results from this particular survey. Jump to the next slide. Perfect. So when we surveyed manufacturers, we could see that many of them currently use recycled content. So this was 84% of responses. So congratulations to those 4 people out of 70 that guessed correctly. But it just shows that there's great adoption of recycled content already. So even if we're not necessarily capitalizing on that wonderful effort from a marketing perspective or a narrative perspective, we are seeing a really great example of, 84% of the manufacturers we surveyed are already working in that space. 2% we're not sure as well. So that's an interesting point to note. So we also asked those manufacturers that do use recycled content if they verify and then certify their products. So while certifying recycled content seems to be common practice, not all products are certified. So only 24% of survey respondents use a third-party certification scheme for their products, such as EPDs, so Environment Product Disclosure Statements, Global Green Tag, or GECA certifications, both of which we rate very highly. And you see that 23% of marked other, which includes a combination of third-party verification for some products and data provided by the suppliers. So that might, for me, that tells me that could be an example of a manufacturer who is helping get a customer across the line by using a variety of data sources, but they still have that clear view of what's contained in their products and how that's translating to the final manufactured product. So as we saw at the beginning of this section, businesses need to share more information on their products in the future in line with government reporting requirements. So if we jump to our clients asking for certified products, in our survey, 72% of respondents indicated that our customers ask for sustainable products, and 28% mentioned that our customers ask for a particular certification, reflecting an appetite from customers to get very specific information from the products. So then we asked about the potential financial benefits of using recycled content in products, where almost 60% of surveyed participants recognize an increase in sales or access to new markets by using recycled content on their products. In fact, if we took a closer look at the respondents that had recycled content, so that's the 24% in the previous graph, 71% had experienced an increased sale or access to new markets, which actually is a tremendous reflection on the value of pursuing this path of both using recycled content as well as the verification opportunities there as well. So there's definitely a link to greater financial advantage for that use. So these results show that there is demand for sustainable products, and that a percentage of clients are already asking for specific certifications, and that getting certified products could have a financial benefit reflected in increased sales or access to new markets. So in addition to these, direct sales elements, there's also another key driver for material selection, which is the rating schemes. And I can see a few friendlies from Green Star Online today, which is wonderful. So I'm going to try and do this justice. So this is a focus for both government and private sector. And I'm sure everyone has heard of Green Star, and the Green Star rating system was developed by the Green Building Council of Australia. And Green Star sets the standard for healthy, resilient, positive buildings and places. And it rates the sustainability of buildings, fit outs, and communities. Green Star is very well recognised and it's been used extensively across Australia. There's over 5,660 Green Star certifications across 3,500 buildings, and 35% of all certifications are for projects in New South Wales. So New South Wales is certainly pulling its weight on that front. So the focus on Green Star will continue into the future. And from July 2026, the Commonwealth Government Office projects that office projects over $15 million will need to achieve a 4-star minimum Green Star certification. So we're just seeing, more and more rigor in this space, and a progression of an existing trend, which is Green Star adoption. And we certainly think that's a very good thing. So project owners can seek Green Star verification under a number of different levels of recognition. So there's 4-star, 5-star, and 6-star. 6-star being the highest, meaning world leadership. And the Green Star ratings depend on the total number of points awarded. I can think of a very active project example that I'm currently working on for a major infrastructure project in New South Wales, which has actually just been finished. It's been built. It is a train station, and we're working really hard to ensure that we meet the 6-star rating. And what it does entail is just really thinking about every aspect of the project and how we can optimize our performance on that front, And I think there's just a very real sense from a client perspective that, you know, achieving 6-star is critically important to this project. And because it's such an ambitious achievement, 6-star, every little percent helps. So I think it really demonstrates the opportunity that, say, use of recycled content could have today to really help our, you know, specifiers and developers achieve their targets, and provides manufacturers with an opportunity to be included in some of these more high-profile projects. So how do project owners apply for Green Star? In the Green Star Building Rating Scheme, project owners seek credits under 8 different categories. So you can see those listed on the screen now. So responsible, healthy, resilient, positive. Then there's places, people, nature, and leadership. And it's the responsible category, top left, that's related to how the building is designed, procured, built, and handed over. So this is where points are awarded based on the products and materials used to build the building. Project owners can use a tool called the Responsible Product Score Checker. This looks at factors like sustainability, ethical sourcing, minimal environmental footprint, and so on. And if products have a particular certification, they can contribute more points under the responsible category. Paula's going to show you later on some of the relevant certifications in the next section of the webinar that can help with this. But what's important here is that project owners are looking for products with sustainability certifications to meet this credit and help achieve this Green Star rating. So there's a lot of, I guess, momentum in different parts of the development phase to help achieve these lofty and ambitious goals. So I'll move on to the next slide now, which is the Green Star rating scheme. Obviously applies to buildings, homes, community precincts, and so on. But infrastructure projects are covered under a different scheme, and many of you will be familiar with this, but it's the Infrastructure Sustainability Rating Scheme. The Infrastructure Sustainability Council scheme was developed by, is developed and administered by the Infrastructure Sustainability Rating Scheme. It's an Australian-New Zealand rating framework for infrastructure assets, and it covers transport, water, communications, and energy infrastructure projects. And the usage what is the usage of the scheme in ANZ? As of June 2024, there are 405 registered IS projects across Australia and New Zealand, including 92 registered projects in New South Wales with 70 certified. So in 23-24 alone, there were 22 projects certified within New South Wales. So many government agencies mandate the use of the IS rating scheme, including Transport for New South Wales, the Victorian Government's Level Crossing Removal Authority, and the Queensland Government in their state infrastructure plan. So once again, it's certainly a viable market for those looking to increase their exposure to major potential clients or business organizations such as these three mentioned. So with this rating scheme, there are a number of categories and credits related to material selection. So under the innovation category, IC4 rewards projects that use companies or materials listed in the iSupply directory. So suppliers need to demonstrate their sustainability credentials to be listed in the iSupply directory. IC5, the one below, allocates points based on material circularity with a focus on both recycled content and end-of-life management. If a project owner is targeting a credit under IC5, they need to demonstrate the proportion of recycled content in the product and its end-of-life management. It's mandatory that for products to have an environmental product disclosure statement to achieve this credit. So under the resource efficiency and management category, RSO6 addresses the embodied carbon in materials used in infrastructure projects and uses the IS materials calculator tool to conduct end-of-life analysis, so LCAs. There's no benefit in holding a certification scheme when using the IS materials calculator. However, the tool incorporates built-in functionalities to account for EPDs. Finally, RSO7 evaluates the use of sustainability labeled products and supply chains in the construction projects. And for this credit, they list the ISC approved environmental labels. So we'll cover this in a little bit more detail in the next section. So now that we've established that information needs to be readily available, and one way to do this is to certify products. So I'm going to hand you over to Paula Saldias right now to take us through the certification schemes section. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, Christian. So we all recognize that it's important to convey environmental, social, and governance traits for products, services, assets, and organizations, right? But there's so many certification schemes out there. So how do we know which one is right for our business? There are environmental declarations, eco-label standards, rating schemes, tools, and environmental product declarations, among many others. And they're different depending on the sector, geography, impact area, certification process, certifying body, and scope, so whether they are at the product, asset, or company level. For this project, we look at the schemes most relevant to the building product manufacturers in Australia. And I will take you through the various schemes to give you a broad overview. And then I'm going to focus on the 4 schemes that we believe are more relevant for the industry. We will start first by looking at certification schemes. So they certify a product, service, or organization meet a specific sustainability or quality standard based on a set of criteria assessed by an independent body. They're usually third-party verified, generally affordable, and have a broad use of across products, services, and organizations. However, some certifications have suffered some reputational damage due to misrepresentation of impact. One example that we have on the screen is Climate Active. And for the ones that are not so familiarized with this, this certification scheme became very popular among organizations as a way to achieve carbon neutrality status. However, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the ACCC, conducted an investigation last year where Climate Active could not provide clear evidence on how the rules to achieve carbon neutrality work. And as a result, Climate Active had to review the rules and certification scheme overall. And this is to show that certification schemes are valuable, but they need to have a clear governance, and that is a transparent approach on how the certification is achieved and what it means. Then we have labels. They are used to disclose product-specific environmental or social data, including qualities, inclusions, and considerations of your products. The labels can be both detailed and broad in scope and can provide quick indication to stakeholders of environmental and social credentials. They can be cost-intensive, require significant time investment, and sometimes they can be a little bit complex to maintain if a product mix changes frequently. On the screen, we have fair trade as an example, but you might also remember the healthy heart tick, which was replaced by the health start rating system. The healthy heart tick label system came across some reputational and credibility issues as the criteria used to assess the products was really not clear. So for example, you could see some junk food products with the tick and that represented them being the best of the bad bunch. So this also illustrates that it's very important to understand the criteria under which your product is being assessed and the value that will bring to it. In this slide, we have standards and tools. So standards provide a set of instructions or guidance to follow in the development of a product, service, or process. Often standards can be relatively inexpensive to engage with and provide detailed guidance to inform an organizational approach. But it's important to notice that these are not third-party verified. And as you can see, the example that we have here are the ISO standards, which probably most of you have engaged with. And finally, we have tools, which is an instrument or document that a person or organization can use to inform a pathway or approach for developing their own commitments. Tools can be relatively inexpensive and provide a detailed guidance to inform an organization's approach. However, often these are not third-party verified, and sometimes it can be challenging to find the right tool to fit the purpose or use. On the screen, we have an example of a carbon footprint calculation tool, which is usually quite standard and helps companies measure their emissions and inform their targets. We wanted to give you some additional details on environmental product declarations, or EPDs. EPDs are certified documents that are internationally recognized and have a standardized approach. EPDs are considered the benchmark for sustainability assessments, and they provide transparent and verified information about the environmental impact of products across their life cycle and are applicable to a wide range of products. The EPD framework is based on life cycle assessment principles and provide environmental reporting across some of the following categories, including global warming potential, energy use, resource depletion, waste generation, among other impacts. EPDs require third-party verification. So if you're considering obtaining an EPD for one of your products, you will need to collect the data, do the calculations, get the results verified by a third party, and then submit them for certification. EPD certified products are listed online in online registries, enabling stakeholders to easily find the products that are already certified. By the end of last year, there were over 6,500 EPDs published for Australia and New Zealand, with building and construction products dominating this mix. Before we continue, we wanted to ask the manufacturers in our audience if any of your products have EPD. You can tick yes, no, or I don't know. And we will give you a couple of minutes to provide an answer. I can see the live results at the moment. It's looking really well. I'll give another minute. We have almost half of the participants responded, but yeah, we want to know specifically for the product manufacturers in the room. Okay, I think we reached the top, the limit, so I'm just gonna end the poll and share the results. Great. So it's great to see that many of the manufacturers in the webinar have an EPD for one of your products. And we know that there is a lot of work that goes behind it. So well done for all of you that have one. I'll stop sharing the results now. And for those who have not yet engaged with one, we wanted to show you an example of an EPD report we prepared for a client. This is Kingspan Insulation. This report is publicly available in case you want to review the rest of the document. But as we can see on the first screenshot, this EPD is related to a particular product, the cool duct system. In the second screenshot, you can see that it has been verified by a third party, and that is reflected in that blue and green logo on the bottom left. And as you can see in the third screenshot, and you can download the whole document, an EPD includes a lot of information about the product. And the report will usually include an overview of the product, including specifications and attributes, and then more specific information about the life cycle assessment, including stages and boundaries, and also information on the manufacturing process, materials use, and environmental performance. So this is also an example of the same report. And as we mentioned before, an EPD goes through the whole life cycle of a product, from raw material supply to manufacturing, use, maintenance, through to demolition, transport of waste, and waste disposal. It includes an in-depth analysis of the product's environmental impacts, such as CO2 emissions, including global warming potential, which is the contribution of the product's life cycle to climate change, land transformation impact, which accounts for emissions resulting from land use changes, such as deforestation or land conversion for raw material extraction, ozone depletion potential, which evaluates the release of substances that contribute to the depletion of the ozone layer, such as certain refrigerants or manufacturing by the product, and other environmental indicators such as acidification potential, which is the impact on ecosystems, water bodies, and among other indicators. So with this, we wanted to show you that EPDs do require an effort in data collection, but they also include a comprehensive data about the product's environmental impact, and that definitely helps your clients in their decision making, and also reflect any of your efforts in making your products more sustainable. Now I wanted to walk you through the results of our certification scheme analysis. So we look at 24 different schemes, and we use a multi-criteria assessment to understand the most relevant schemes for product manufacturers for the built environment in Australia. We assess the schemes across the criteria you see on the screen. And these are market acceptance. So is the scheme widely recognized within the Australian industry or within an existing standard or rating system? Governance, is the scheme governance transparent enough to provide confidence and assurance about its process and impact? And third-party verification, Does the scheme provide third-party verification of the recycled content? Universality. Does the certification or eco-label cover suitable broad range of materials to be widely applicable across categories? And geographic availability. So is the scheme available in Australia and internationally? On the next 2 slides, I'll detail the 10 schemes we believe are most relevant to building product manufacturers in Australia. Here you can see the list of the first 5 top-rated certifications. I'll run through the product applicability and key strengths of each, and then go into more detail on the 3 at the top of the table. In the product applicability column, you can see where your products are relevant. Here it's important to notice that each of the certification bodies has other certifications available, and that we focus on the ones that were relevant to account for recycled content. The 3 that scored the highest and under our multi-criteria assessment were GECA, Global Green Tag, and FSC Mix. Let's start with GECA recycled products. You can see that the certification has a broad range of product applicability. For example, it can be used for cement, concrete products, steel, paint, furniture and fittings, among others. And this certification scored high across all of our criteria, having strong market recognition and accessibility in Australia. Then on a similar trend, we have Global Green Tag manufacturer claim verifications. This certification also covers a broad range of products, and the strengths of this certification include strong market recognition, both internationally and within Australia. And if recycled content verification is solely required, this might be a cost-effective solution, although you will still need to provide additional information for social variables like compliance with ethical and labor standards, and the same with GECA. Then we have FSC Mix, which is a strong certification for timber and wood products, as well as furniture, fixtures, and flooring. This certification also has strong market recognition, data governance, and great accessibility in Australia, although it covers a smaller range of products compared to GECA and Global Green Tag. And if we look at the last 2 on this slide, panel board standards and responsible steel standard, we can see that these apply to certain specific products, right? So the panel board standards, of course, applies to panel boards products for furniture and fixtures, particle board, and engineered wood. And the strengths of this certification are that it has strong governance, it is available in Australia, and provides a third-party certification. On the other hand, the responsible steel applies to steel products, including structural reinforcement and prefabricated steel, and fittings and fixtures products, among others. This certification stands out for its rigorous reporting requirements and data governance, making it a very robust certification to get if this applies to your products. On the second page, we have the certifications that score a little bit lower compared to the first 5, but are still very strong certification schemes. So we have the Living Product Challenge on the first row. And as you can see, it applies to a broad range of products, including finishings, furniture, window, doors, textile and fabrics, plumbing and electrical products, and even landscaping. The high transparency of the requirements and process provides a good visibility on the verification process, so we see that governance is one of their strengths. Then we have the environmental claim validation procedure for recycled content, where its strength is definitely the large inclusion of materials and product types for validation and transparent certification process. The Global Recycle Standard is an international voluntary standard that sets requirements for third-party certification of recycled content, chain of custody, and social and environmental practices. It also includes chemical restrictions. However, the GRS does not provide the certification. Instead, it establishes the criteria that independent accredited certification bodies will use to assess and certify the products. So similar to the ISO standards we saw earlier, it will provide guidance on the data required and the quality, but does not provide the third-party certification. And finally, we have the Organic Content Standard and Cradle-to-Cradle certification. And while both are available in Australia and provide a third-party certification, there's a bit of lower uptake compared to the other certifications we reviewed. So we have identified 3 schemes and EPDs as the most relevant building product as the most relevant for building product manufacturers in Australia. And I'll go into this in a bit more depth now. So GECA Recycled Product Certification has established clear benchmark for minimum recycled content thresholds across various materials and is supported by a third-party verification and strict criteria for traceability and environmental safety. We have then a global green tag that validates the recycled content claims through detailed tools like EPDs, chain of custody, assessment, and ensuring documentation of recycled materials. Here we have FSC Mix, which excels in tracking the origin and type of recycled timber and paper products, among others, ensuring compliance with the stringent chain of custody requirements. And EPDs, on the other hand, provide comprehensive data, including pre- and post-consumer content, as well as use of secondary materials, along with the rest of the data we covered earlier, giving a comprehensive view of the product's environmental impact. We expect to see an increase in reporting requirements over the coming years, as Christian mentioned before, and related to recycled content in products. So this is a type of information government agencies and industry will be looking for from product manufacturers in the future, including product material and weight, recycled material type, proportion of recycled materials, recycled material origin, which refers to the state or country where the resource recovery materials facility is located and processed, a state or country where the product was manufactured, and proportion of Australian recycled materials, and also the recycled content data that has been independently certified. So looking at the information captured by each scheme, we can see that Global Green Tag captures most of the information, and that none of the schemes currently capture the proportion of Australian recycled materials, although this can be declared and captured in an EPD. It will be worthwhile considering these potential reporting requirements when you ask your suppliers for information about the feedstock that you're purchasing, for example. If you can capture this information, you will be able to provide more product transparency and accuracy, which is in line with what government agencies and industry will need to report over the coming years. This table looks at the alignment between each certification scheme and the infrastructure IS rating scheme and Green Star building categories. What we're looking at here is whether having products with certain certifications help contribute towards credits within these rating schemes. And as you can see that RSO 6 only recognizes GECA and Global Green Tag certifications to receive credits from the ones that we reviewed, from the top ones, and all schemes are recognized under RSO 7 and the responsible category in Green Star buildings. So having these certifications might make your product more attractive to project owners who are targeting these rating schemes. When we surveyed businesses to find out about barriers to certification, manufacturers noted that cost and resources, both time and personnel, were some of the key barriers. And this page shows a brief overview of the type of data and documentation you need to obtain for each certification. We can see some common themes or data requirements across the certifications. So, for example, something very basic is that you will be asked about your product description, and you can find this information on your product specifications or technical data sheets or on internal product catalogs or marketing materials. You can also get asked about the material composition, so what's your product made of, and you can find this information in the bill of materials from procurement or product design teams and on specifications provided by your supplier. Other common requests are about your manufacturing process, and this can be found on your standard operating procedures and the production process flow charts from the manufacturing teams. And then for some certifications like GECA and Global Green Tag, you can also get asked about the recycled content percentage, and this can be found in your supplier declarations or invoices and internal sustainability or procurement reports. For the top 3 certifications we reviewed, that is GECA, Global Green Tag, and FSC Mix, you will also get asked some questions on your social compliance. And this is basically demonstrating that there are fair and safe working conditions in your company and across your supply chain. And this could include requirements like health and safety data, which can be found on your material safety data sheets or safety data, material safety data sheets, and on any workplace health and safety compliance documents. It could also include data related to labor standards and responsible sourcing, which can be found on supplier codes of conduct, third-party audit reports, and HR policies on fair labor practices. It can also be found in chain of custody documentation and supplier certifications and traceability records. So it's important to notice that the information requirements will also change depending on the product you are certifying, but we wanted to give you an idea of some of the common data requirements and where to find them. So here's the estimated cost and time required for each of the certifications, and being cost and time the main variables we're looking at. When we look at certification costs and compare the upfront investment versus ongoing costs, we can see that GECA and Global Green Tag have the lowest upfront cost, between 5,000 and almost 9,000, making them accessible for business looking at a cost-effective sustainability certification. FSC Mix falls in the mid-range, between 4,000 and 7,000, but its annual audit costs should also be factored into long-term budgeting. Then we have environmental product declarations, which are the most expensive ones due to the cost of conducting a life cycle assessment, the independent verification, and then the program, and then the registration of the product. If we look at the cost per additional product, FSC Mix offered the best scalability, as businesses do not have to pay extra for additional products. It's just an amendment to the certificate. GECA and Global Green Tag charge moderate fees, between 300 and 3,000 for each additional product, making them manageable for business expanding their certified product range. And then we have EPDs with costs that are a bit higher, so between 2,000 and 4,000 per additional product, and they still remain the most data-intensive certification. In terms of time required by the applicants, this includes the time spent on data gathering and the internal workload. And we can see that EPDs can be the most demanding type of certification, mostly to the complexity of LCA calculations, and the rest of the schemes are in a similar range of time, but this, of course, will depend on the data available, the system your company has in place, and how accessible is the data from your suppliers. So some key takeaways for business choosing a certification are that Global Green Tag and GECA can be a good choice for a cost-effective certification that would highlight both your efforts on recycled content and ethical sourcing. If you're working with wood-based products and need sustainable sourcing proof, FSC Mix is probably better. And if you're targeting large infrastructure projects and that use green building ratings, an EPD could be the most comprehensive one, but you have to be prepared for high cost and data requirements. So in the end, the certification you choose will depend on the information required by your clients and the sustainability credentials you need to provide to stay competitive in the market. Okay, so we're heading towards the last section of our webinar, but before, we wanted to ask the manufacturers in the session, how ready is your organization to engage with recycled content certification process? We already know that many of you have an EPD, so some of the options include have already certified at least one of my products, actively researching and planning to apply within 12 months, interested but need more information before proceeding, currently collecting necessary data but not ready to apply, and not considering certification at this time. We have our poll open and I can see the answers coming up. Great. We have that many of you have already certified at least one of your products. And many of you also researching to apply it within the next 12 months. I'll give you a couple, maybe 30 more seconds to collect a few more answers, but this is looking great. All right. I'll share the results now. And as you can see, and consistent with what you said before about EPDs, many of you have already certified at least one of your products. Also, 21% of the respondents are actively researching and planning to apply within the next 12 months. Some of you are also interested but need more information about proceeding. So hopefully this webinar has been helpful for that. And many, another percentage, around 8%, are collecting the data but not ready to apply. We know that this preparation phase can take a bit depending on the systems that the company has in place. And a lower percentage are not considering a certification at this time, which is also fine. So we know this can be a very extensive process. So we wanted to summarize a step-by-step to engage with certification schemes, as you can see on this slide. So we hope today's webinar has helped with the first step and get a better understanding of certification schemes. And you can find out more about them by contacting the certification providers directly for resources and guidance and speaking to your peers, customers, or independent advisory bodies. Once you've chosen the right scheme, you'll need to allocate some time to understanding the data and disclosure requirements. The sources of this information might be different for every business. And we know that the certifying organizations do provide a detailed guidance on the type of data, formats that you have to submit your data. So please feel free to reach out to them if you have any questions or you need support during this process. Then you will need to identify who the relevant team members are within your business. We'll need to be involved in this process and engage them in a working group or similar. And based on your current situation, you might need to take some additional steps to support your certification. So the time it takes to be ready for certification will be unique to your business. So understand what needs to be done and map it across a realistic timeline is crucial. A key item to support your certification process is obtaining the data from your suppliers. To do this, you will need to engage with them and provide clarity on the data that you require, the timelines, and highlight why it's important for your business to get your product certified. It's important to notice that for certain certifications, you might require an independent third party to verify your data before submission, as we saw for EPDs. So you also need to factor this in your timeline. So as we cover in this webinar, getting a third-party certification for your products can help you align with current and future reporting requirements and contribute to construction standards set for government projects and expanding your access to market. We know there are a few barriers to pursue certification for your products, and while we can't address them all, we did wanted to share some additional resources available. And I will hand it over to Karen now that will take you through some of them in the next section.
Great, thank you, Paula. Yeah, so I'm just going to share a few useful resources and then we'll head into the Q&A. So when we surveyed manufacturers in November, you told us that these were the key barriers to achieving certification, and cost was certainly raised by a large number of manufacturers, both the cost to certify and the high initial investment. Another key factor that you mentioned was the lack of awareness by customers, and that customers do not perceive added value. And we do think that this is changing. So we think that more customers will be asking for those certified products in the future. So while we weren't able to address all of these barriers today, we'd like to share some information about initiatives that are coming up, both to help promote products that contain recycled content and also some information about how to procure to government. So first of all, just with regards to procuring to government, for the majority of New South Wales government infrastructure projects, government does not directly procure the products. We award an architect to design the project, and then we tender and we award a builder or a civil works contractor to do the build. So we include guidance in our tender documentation because we are trying to drive sustainability aspirations in our projects. But ultimately, the awarded architect specifies the products, and then the awarded builder or civil works contractor procures the products. So we really recommend connecting to the contractors who have been awarded projects. Here are a number of ways to determine who has been awarded particular projects. First of all, on the New South Wales e-tendering website, we publish awarded projects. And when you look in there, you can see the type of project and kind of what's involved and the value. And in the right-hand column, you can actually see which contractor has been awarded that particular contractor. So it's kind of a good way to understand who's winning lots of contracts and reach out and connect with those major project owners. Another way to connect with project owners is through the ICN procurement portal. And this industry capability network, ICN, is actually Australia-wide, and New South Wales government funds the New South Wales Gateway portal. So you can register for free, you can register your product, and then that helps connect you with project owners. And we will be sharing the slides, so you'll be able to click on these hyperlinks. And then some agencies also publish their upcoming pipeline of infrastructure projects, like Transport for New South Wales. When you click on there, you can see what's in the planning stage, what's been awarded, and the like as well. That's quite useful. And then federal government has the Oz Tender website, and Western Sydney Airport is actually a federal government project. And on their website, they have a particular place where you can click and you can see who's been awarded particular tenders. For example, Multiplex was awarded the terminal works, and back when they were first awarded that project, they actually did a call out for suppliers. So it's a good way to connect with them through that as well. Now, one of the ways that we can help businesses is to promote local products and really get the word out there about local manufacturers. So New South Wales Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water, or New South Wales DQ, will shortly be publishing a directory of recycled materials suppliers, similar to what Victorian government has done. So please keep an eye out for that later this year. Within Bradfield Development Authority, we have just finished developing a recycled products guidance document. And what we'll be doing is sharing this with architects and builders to help them consider where to use recycled content. So that includes products like thermal and acoustic insulation, recycled plastic, non-pressurized pipes, geotextiles for landscaping, plasterboard equivalent products, clay, brick and concrete masonry, and so on. And a number of industry bodies helped us to produce that, and that will be publicly available in about 2 months' time. Service New South Wales also supports small businesses. There are advisory services and events related to procurement, and the federal government has the Oz Industry Program for all Australian businesses as well. So that brings us to a close of the webinar content today, and we'll be opening for questions in just a moment. So please start adding your questions in, preferably in the Q&A field would be most helpful. You might need to click on the more button to find that. And then we'll be sharing this webinar recording and the slides in a few days' time via email to all registrants. So for those who aren't joining the Q&A, we'd like to thank you for joining us today and really hope that you found useful insights from this. And those who would like to stay on for the Q&A, we have about 30 minutes. Really good time to ask Christian and Paula lots of questions, including technical questions. So we'll open up for Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can take a proper look at the Q&A and the chat.
There are
Great.
a few that have been coming through the chat. I can probably just roll through them if that's helpful for anyone listening online. So
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
So I'm just working my way through the list. So from Anna Davies. Hi, Anna. So do all schemes use a common definition of recycled content and the various types, e.g. pre and post-consumer content? And do they all adopt ISO 14021 definitions? So most do have a standardized definition, and the ISO 14021 is essentially the common factor for a lot of those. So FSC recycled reference is that one, for example. But there are some others, like the PEFC one, that allows for different proportions of recycled virgin materials, or others that have different verification requirements. So I'd say that there's a common language to an extent, but there's some kind of slight differences across some of the different criteria to be aware of as well. So it's really, I guess, encourage you to do due diligence as you get into the details of certifying through that process. So we've got one from Joanna Almeida. Hi, Joanna. So manufacturers are also being asked to report on embodied carbon, especially through EPDs. Did you factor into your review the amount of ticks manufacturers get through each certification? And are there strategies for manufacturers to certify against different metrics in a cost-effective way? This is a great question, Joanna, and I think a lot of manufacturers and others in the industry raise the same concerns, which is, you're just asking me to do one more thing. It's more paperwork. It's more. So there's probably a couple of general strategies. So starting with like a common LCA can be a really helpful starting point, as it sets you up to kind of address some of those different certification processes. There's certainly, I guess, multiple multi-compatible EPD programs. So for example, Global Green Tag and International EPD have cross-recognition. So it makes you, particularly if you're, I guess, supplying internationally, that could be really helpful. So I would really encourage people to look at the mutual recognition. I guess there's some guidance around modular data for multiple certifications, which is more just how you, I guess, organize yourselves internally a little bit and how you work with your supply chain to help obtain that data. We know that for us, when we do life cycle assessment work, all projects start the same way, which is with a request for information that can take anywhere from 4 weeks to a year, depending on who's responsible for that and how I guess mature the data management is in that space. Just if you're wondering if this could be you and you're wondering how to get it closer to 4 weeks than a year, we recommend just having one person responsible for the RFI process. Someone kind of steering the ship, so to speak, on the client side seems to be the biggest determinant of success, because if it gets distributed, those requests across the organization, you're always chasing little pieces of information from a whole range of people, and tends to slow things down. That's probably they're probably the main ones. As far as did you factor into the review the amount of ticks manufacturers get through each certification? I'm not quite clear on the ticks element, Joan. If you wouldn't mind just expanding that a little bit in the chat, that would be great. We call out from Salman on this is in the chat rather than the Q&A. References work at the RMIT University Construction Waste Lab. So recognizes the need for supportive circular economy policies and certification scheme. And so he's pasted a link to a recent report on CE policies. That's really helpful. Thank you. Stephen asked why we've been using FSC recycled label rather than FSC mixed label. And it's a really good call out, Stephen. So thanks for flagging that one. So the RFSC recycled label focuses on 100% recycled material, and the RFC, so the Forestry Stewardship Council mix, is a combination of FSC certified virgin material, recycled content, and controlled wood. The FSC mix is, I guess, there's broader uptake because it's easier to find that composition. It can be quite challenging in some industries to find 100% recycled material. There was some interesting work we did on a commercial furniture product stewardship program for the Commonwealth Government a couple of years ago called the Fit for Office project, which was really fascinating. And I spoke to, I guess, a rep from FSC at the time. And what was really interesting was that there was a way to accredit your management of product stewardship furniture. So essentially would have furniture coming through new, and then you'd be kind of the whole ecosystem and rehoming it. But you could certify the platform so that by virtue of a wooden bench coming in, going to a client, being returned and coming back out, that it could achieve that recycled content certification as an automatic thing, which was super interesting. We didn't get to the point where we got to trial that and work out, I guess, the barriers or challenges with doing that. But conceptually, that was really really fascinating idea that if you manage that circularity that way, you can get some efficiencies there. Sam, again, looking forward to reading the full report. Might be useful to know about an opinion piece in the conversation around the need for recycled product certifications and barriers and strategies. Again, thanks for the link there. And Thompson, thank you. Small middle people emerging and sourcing sustainable products. They help builders value engineer projects and propose the cheapest products, often from offshore. What are the protections from Australian made? Look, that is a really challenging scenario. Strong middle people emerging. Yeah, so I think it's like it's the international procurement element. We actually that was a challenge for us in the commercial furniture space, where we have a couple of high volume providers supplying essentially 80% of the furniture in Australia, and very price sensitive. And so what that meant was that it was only the upper echelon of the premium market that was willing to invest in certifications, eco-labeling, and really ensuring that recycled content of their products. The protections, I think it's still a big it's still a challenge. There is some work done around, I guess, the quality of the materials coming in and the fitness for just health and reuse. But I'd say that it is a gap and a risk, but certainly something that we wanted to think about solving for. I'll refer to you on the Paula for the next one. So is an LCA and EPD required before applying for the Gecko recycled product label, or is the validation to gain the label solely based on the third-party assurance provider?
So it's not a requirement, but many of these certifications do build on any existing requirements. And as we said before, an EPD will help you gather most of the information on your environmental impact, and depending on what your client is looking at, what sustainability credentials you need to show, other certifications like Gecko or Global Green Tag will help you demonstrate and certify this social component as well, and also more specific detail on the use of recycled content. So it depends a little bit on the market that you're playing and the type of clients that you have, but they're not a requirement. They can, if you already have an EPD or an LCA, it can definitely build on that. So it is a great advantage. And as Christian said, start from there and then see what are the other requirements that clients are asking for.
Great, Paula, thank you. Next one from Lucy Sharman. Thanks for joining, Lucy. I think that reference refers to the fact that if you get an EPD, it not only assesses recycled content, but also emissions, water use, etc. So EPDs are expensive, but tick a lot of boxes. I very much agree with you on that front. The common feedback I get from clients is that yes, EPDs are expensive, and particularly if you're a manufacturer and you weren't expecting to have to, fork out for an EPD, or for example, you have an EPD, but then your manufacturing process has changed significantly and therefore you need to go through a new EPD process. Look, they are expensive. We are certainly working on, efficiencies to help bring down the cost. Unfortunately, the pricing is fairly standardized across the market at the moment, but it does really add a lot of value. And I think the way the market's going, those data transparency points, embodied carbon, environmental impact will only become more and more important as to the specifiers and to other people procuring particular goods. So yeah, look, a lot of value. I'm not saying a blanket recommendation, everyone needs one for everything, but I think if you can develop a deep understanding of your, target clients, target market, I think increasingly we're seeing that EPDs are required. So yeah, good call out. What are the for John? What are the safeguards, John Steele? What are the safeguards to prevent greenwashing? Look, I think Paula shared the example earlier of the Hartic Foundation, and grew up in Australia like I did. Will remember it from seeing it on food, and I think with certifications we need to be really clear about what they are and aren't. So an EPD, for example, isn't a certification. Essentially, it's just your, most transparent view of all of the elements, like materials involved in a particular product, and also its manufacturing, processing, and distribution pathways. So I look at that as almost your reference for excellence, but also there's a lot of scope for interpretation. And we often find that when we produce EPDs and then work with our lovely friends in marketing, that it's actually a conversation that we need to have, because often there's conditions to say, yeah, this is the performance requirements under these conditions, which unfortunately doesn't necessarily make for great marketing, because you have some, caveats or conditions on what would otherwise be a very sleek statement. But we did have an example of a client recently who manufactured, soft drink in bottles and wanted to make a claim about PET that was, recycle this bottle again and again. And because there's like a loss factor in the recovery of the PET plastic, there was a few statements of that nature, and they couldn't quite be proven. And so, yeah, the concern was that there was risk of greenwashing there. And unfortunately for that organization, there was legal action launched against them based on those claims in Europe. And so a bit of a challenge. Thank you, Anne, for joining us. Alexander Lester, does the supplier company need to initiate getting onto the Bradfield accredited supplier list? Oh, that's probably one for you, Karen.
Yeah, sure. So I guess what we've developed is this directory or this guidance document to really call out some opportunities to use products with recycled content and particular product categories. And one of those is geotextiles. So I'll have a look at whether or not the Enviromesh product, the geotextile product, suits kind of that guidance document and meets those criteria. And if so, like, I can definitely include it. We're including where it's manufactured as well. But in the future, the New South Wales government's recycled product directory is definitely the place to register all products. And in the future, we'll be kind of directing everyone towards that directory, because, as a product manufacturer, you'll be the one who's keeping that up to date. So we'll be making sure that, we're directing people to the most up-to-date resource.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Karen. That's really helpful. So just jumping back into the list, so for Samantha Surfield, thank you, Samantha. Is there a minimum requirement of post-consumer content versus pre-consumer content for 100% certification of a 100% recycled content product? In that example, I would say yes, because if you're saying it's 100% recycled content, it would need to be verified to be so. And do you need it's a good question though, and do you need an EPD if all product material is already certified with the new 100% recycled product, or would you just go for a GECA recycled content certification? So, probably Paula, one for you around essentially the GECA recycled content certification. And the question is essentially, if you've already got 100% recycled content, do you also need an EPD?
So I would say that the EPD will, so that's the whole maybe point of the certification, is actually having a document by a third party that verifies and certifies that your product is actually made of, let's say, 100% content. And in the case of an EPD, it will show the environmental impact that this 100% recycled content product has. And you could also try to look at other EPDs from similar products that maybe use less percentage of recycled content and compare the two of them. And that if that percentage of recycled content should be reflected in many cases in a smaller environmental impact, but it also depends on your product. So yeah, it's important to first do the assessment. If you're there, your product is 100% recycled content, the EPD should add the value of that additional robust data that you can present to your clients.
Great, thank you. And Paula, just one more. So do any schemes have certification ratings, i.e. not just a yes or no, but ratings to show the degree of sustainability excellence?
Yes, for sure. So the results of the certifications, you will get the certification if your product complies with all the categories, but we know that the certification bodies work really closely with the applicants to show the gaps, show where there can be an improvement, and then a time frame to resolve those observations, and then get them and then finalize the assessment. So that's one option. But yeah, you can also get different ratings. Of course, again, like you only get the certification if you comply with the standards. But if not, there definitely will be an analysis, a detailed analysis on opportunities for improvement to achieve it.
Perfect. Thank you, Paula. I've just got one more in the chat and I'm going to jump to the Q&A questions. So from Katrina, so for wood-based products with recycled content, the more recycled content, the worse the carbon story. i.e. in EPD 1 to 3, biogenic virgin wood has a big negative carbon number, but when you use recycled wood, it is a 0 as a waste. So overall, instead of having a negative carbon value, the wood product, which is great for overall carbon, will have a poorer carbon footprint with recycled. So do the rating schemes credit points for more recycled content or more carbon? How to explain to the market it's a poorer carbon footprint or a better recycled content story? Look, that's a really good call out. So I think I'll take the first part and then hand the second part to Paula. But I would say that it's really common in the sustainability space to be forced to make a bit of a trade-off. So we see it a lot, particularly in the agriculture space. In one particular, and if we look at all like the 11 or so impact factors from an LCA perspective, you might find that from an agricultural product, just even like a vegetable, moving up to a different location, so sourcing it from Thailand rather than Indonesia, might improve the carbon score, for example, but have a worse impact on, say, water eutrophication or deforestation. And it's a really challenging, I guess, ethical conundrum to navigate. Because in this particular example, you're saying, well, is it more important to be zero waste or more important to reduce our carbon impact? And it's hard to provide a definitive answer. And I think life cycle assessment can go some way to answering that, in so much they can tell you in a specific scenario what are the exact variations between two different LCAs, for example. But it doesn't really provide you with strong insights around, well, is it better to have a worse water impact or carbon impact? So you'd have to make a decision based on that. Typically, from a corporate perspective, you would see an ESG strategy or a circular economy strategy emphasizing certain aspects. And typically that's how we see our clients making a call when it's sort of a line ball call. The other one would be, I guess, like the marketing element. Say, for example, you might be a supermarket and you might say, we cannot have a story saying that we've created a new operation in a water stretched environment and created a water scarcity issue in a developing country. So even though it's slightly better, we just can't have that story as being something that we've created. So it's tough to navigate. But from a ratings schemes credit point, so for recycled content, Paula, are you able to jump on that one?
Yeah, for sure. So it's interesting because, as Christian mentioned, an EPD and an LCA will show you the environmental impact, and will not really make any recommendations, or will be hard to notice any benefits from using more recycled content and so on. That's why these other certifications, such as GECA, Global Green Tag, FSC Mix. So in our conversations with the certifying bodies, some of them were very interested in adding an additional variable that are the benefits of using, or any of these improvements in your products, using using recycled content, and then reflecting that in lower use of raw materials and so on. So certification bodies are also are conscious of this, noticing that you not only have to look at this as less harm, but also what's the benefit created from more sustainable products on one side. And you can also, it will be hard to say if they have a specific recommendation. For example, if yes, it's better, or your same question in the chat, is it better to have more recycled content and a higher carbon footprint? But the certifications will highlight other sustainable efforts that you're doing for your product. So in that sense, the EPD, again, is a great first step. Will give you all the information that you need on your environmental impact, but the other certifications will help tell the full story if you want. And yeah, we know that certifying bodies are working to keep improving and reflect all the good work that goes behind the products that get certified.
Thank you, Paula. So to go to the, we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A. We're getting them from all sides. This is good. Love the engagement. All right. So from Eng Savory, from our Q&A chat. So thank you for the presentation. Do you see a need for a more structured regulatory framework to be introduced for recycled content and other product sustainability criteria, e.g. embodied carbon, to ensure a minimum standard of what is considered an acceptable form of evidence for verification, but also to create a level playing field? Great question, and yes, I do. There's been some work that a few of us undertook over the past 2 years to even just consolidate data sets to ensure that we're all working from the same song sheet. I know Neighbours has taken a really active role in this space to do some work around setting baselines, essentially to say, well, here's some unfavorable performance baselines on carbon, for example. So we would need you to do an EPD to demonstrate that you are exceeding this on performance, or else you're stuck with these low numbers that were unfavorable. So yes, and I think regulatory push would be really helpful as well. Yeah, I think it's not the most mature space from I guess an implementation point of view. It's come a long way in the last few years, but I think as soon as really significant amounts of dollars start sitting behind some of these decisions, the scrutiny really increases, and I think we've got really good data now, and EPDs are particularly powerful in that selection process. But people are always looking for an edge, and if they think a different methodology can yield a different outcome for them, it's a competitive commercial landscape. So yeah, it does drive people seeking to optimize conditions that are favorable to their product, which is totally fine. Like, they're just the natural market doing its thing. But I guess the more clarity we can get from a policy perspective, the simpler it is to compare apples with apples. So we really like EPDs for that reason, particularly in the building product space, because it allows you to do that. But yeah, there's certainly an opportunity to strengthen that approach. So yeah, great question from Kathy as well. So in the slide on what is recycled content, it had pre-consumer recycled content was in materials reclaimed during the manufacturing process. And then in the definition, material circularity index, materials reclaimed in the manufacturing process are repurposed, not recycled. So it isn't only when it is someone else's waste. Well, it's a really good call out. And I guess it depends on, so that's from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, like the Material Circularity Index, and I guess it's an interpretation challenge, and different organizations take a slightly different approach. I just was looking at it from an ISO 14021 perspective. So pre-consumer recycled content can be counted and recycled only if it leaves the original manufacturing system and is reprocessed externally. So that's an element that's really important. And then internal scrap or rework is seen as waste reduction, not recycling. So I think that's the ISO definition, which is really important. And I think from the MCI perspective, so reclaimed in manufacturing equals repurposed, and recycled is externally recovered and processed material re-entering the value chain. So yeah, that's a really good distinction. And yeah, I think, for example, in a building products environment, we can see a lot more of that type of behavior taking place. But yeah, it is an industry by industry challenge. But thank you for raising that, Kathy. It certainly provides some additional clarity. Cool. So I can see, just going to scroll up quickly just to see where I've got to. Great, there's some people catching up out of the session, which is great. So from Lauren, no, it's to Alexander. For those that are just connecting directly, I won't go through those on the call.
Yeah, I think you might have covered them all now, Christian.
Oh, perfect. I have this creeping fear that I missed one early on. So if I missed yours, please take the opportunity to repost it. I'll get it now. But I think I got, here we go. No, that's all right. That's related to that other conversation. Great. Well, we are just about at time. So Karen, I'll actually hand back to you if that's okay, just to close out the session.
Yeah, great. So thanks everyone for your questions. And, if you have further questions, we will be sharing in the post-event email, just an email address that you can reach out to at sustainability@bda.newsouthwales.gov.au. And we'll be sharing the slides and the recording. But yeah, we welcome further engagement. So please do reach out via that email. And yeah, so thank you everyone for joining. And thank you, Christian and Paula, for sharing your expertise. Have a great afternoon, everyone.